Melody Shari has officially taken a legal step that signals a major change in how this long-running situation is being handled. After years of public tension, indirect statements, and online commentary, the involvement of lawyers marks a clear shift. This is no longer about opinions, emotions, or reality television moments. It is about boundaries, accountability, and consequences. The move itself did not come with a public announcement or explanation, which makes it even more telling. Instead of words, the message came through formal paperwork, and that alone changes the entire tone of the situation. For a long time, the dynamic between Melody Shari, Martell Holt, and Arion existed mostly in the public eye through interviews, social media posts, and fan discussions. The story played out across platforms where emotions often took center stage. What makes this moment different is that it steps outside of public debate and enters a space where facts, documentation, and patterns matter more than feelings. Once legal action begins, everything slows down, and every move becomes intentional. This situation did not begin suddenly. It has been building for years. After Melody and Martell's divorce became final, many believed the chapter had closed. Melody appeared to shift her focus toward rebuilding her life. She concentrated on her children, her businesses, and her personal growth. She stopped responding publicly to rumors and stopped engaging in back-and-forth arguments online. From the outside, it looked like she had moved on completely and chosen peace over public conflict. However, silence does not always mean nothing is happening. While Melody stayed quiet, the conversation around her never truly stopped. Martell continued to speak about her in interviews and public discussions, often presenting himself as misunderstood or unfairly judged. Arion's social media activity also became more pointed over time. Captions, statements, and shared posts suggested frustration, truth-telling, and being silenced. At first, fans brushed these moments off as personal expression, but over time, patterns became noticeable. Repeated mentions, carefully timed posts, and statements that aligned with Melody's public milestones started to stand out. These moments did not appear random to many observers. They seemed connected, and more importantly, they seemed consistent. When behavior repeats itself over time, it stops looking accidental. From a legal standpoint, this matters. A single comment may be dismissed, but repeated actions can build a case. Melody's choice to remain silent publicly may have been strategic rather than emotional. Instead of reacting, she appeared to be watching, documenting, and collecting information. Screenshots, dates, interviews, and captions all tell a story when placed together. This approach is very different from reacting in the moment. It suggests preparation and patience rather than impulse. In legal situations, this kind of restraint can be powerful. As time passed, the tone of public statements reportedly began to change. Some comments moved away from personal feelings and closer to claims that could be seen as statements of fact. This shift is important because statements presented as fact carry legal weight, especially when they involve a public figure. When reputation, parenting, or character is questioned repeatedly, the impact can extend beyond personal feelings and into real-world consequences. There were also alleged references involving Melody's children and her role as a mother. For many people, this is where the line is drawn. Children are not public figures, and involving them in public narratives often changes how situations are viewed legally and socially. Fans believe this may have been a turning point where documenting behavior was no longer enough and formal action became necessary. Legal notices are rarely emotional decisions. They are usually calculated and specific. They are not about a single post or interview. They address patterns of behavior over time. They are often sent after careful review of evidence and legal advice. This is why Melody's move feels deliberate rather than reactive. It suggests that the decision was made after reaching a point where silence alone was no longer enough to protect boundaries. The timing of the legal notice also matters. It reportedly came after a period where Melody was celebrating personal and professional success. Business wins, public achievements, and moments of growth were happening at the same time as renewed public commentary from others. Some fans believe this overlap was intentional, as if the narrative was being redirected during moments meant to focus on her progress. Once the legal notice surfaced, the shift online was immediate. Posts became vague, lives became shorter or were postponed, words were chosen more carefully. This kind of sudden change often happens when legal boundaries are introduced. It signals that consequences are now part of the equation. What once felt like free expression now carries risk. Legal notices typically focus on a few key areas. One is defamation, where repeated statements can damage a person's reputation. Even indirect comments can qualify if they lead audiences to certain conclusions. Another area is harassment, where repeated mentions or coordinated timing can be interpreted as unwanted behavior. A third area is interference, where public narratives can impact business opportunities, branding, and public trust. Once a legal notice is delivered, ignorance is no longer an option. Continued behavior after that point can be seen as intentional. This changes the power dynamic completely. What once might have been brushed off as opinion or emotion can now be viewed as defiance. This is why legal involvement often quiets public conversation very quickly. What stands out in this situation is that Melody did not make a public statement about the notice. There was no announcement, no explanation, and no attempt to control public opinion through social media. This restraint makes the action feel protective rather than aggressive. It suggests the goal was not to provoke a reaction, but to set clear boundaries. Legal action forces decisions. Martell and Arion now face choices about how they move forward. Continuing the same behavior could lead to serious consequences. Stepping back could signal acknowledgement of those boundaries. Either way, the situation has shifted into a more serious phase where every action matters. For fans, this moment changes how the entire situation is viewed. What once felt like reality television drama now feels real. Lawyers, documentation, and legal terms introduce a level of seriousness that social media arguments never reach. Viewers are now watching closely, analyzing every post, caption, and interview for meaning. Supporters of Melody see this move as long overdue. Many believe it reflects strength, patience, and self-respect. Comments across platforms suggest that people view this as a way to protect her peace, her children, and her hard-earned reputation. Her silence, paired with legal action, is seen as a powerful statement. On the other side, some supporters of Martell and Arion argue that legal action is an attempt to control the narrative or silence others. However, even within these defenses, questions arise. If nothing inappropriate was happening, why would legal steps be necessary? That question alone shifts public perception and places pressure on those responding. The online energy changed almost overnight. Topics that had been discussed freely for months suddenly became quiet. Planned interviews and appearances were delayed or canceled. This kind of pause is often advised by legal teams, as speaking publicly can complicate matters further. Old posts and interviews are now being revisited with new eyes. Statements that once seemed harmless are being re-examined. Context matters, and when placed alongside newer information, past comments can take on different meaning. This process of review is common when legal action is involved. Melody's decision not to announce her move publicly reinforces the idea that this was not about attention. It appears focused on protection, protecting her reputation, protecting her children, protecting her boundaries. With the legal notice, the rules have changed, and those changes are clear even without public explanation. This move also places pressure on Martell and Arion to choose their next steps carefully. Every post, every comment, and every public appearance now carries weight. The freedom to speak openly about personal grievances is no longer the same. The stakes are higher and the margin for error is smaller. For the first time, the narrative is not driven by social media reactions or reality television moments. It is driven by consequences. This shift changes everything. Power no longer comes from who speaks the loudest, but from who has documentation and legal standing. Melody's approach highlights an important lesson. Silence is not always weakness. In many cases, it is preparation. Taking time to document, reflect, and respond thoughtfully can be far more effective than reacting emotionally in public. Her actions suggest a long-term view rather than a momentary response. As the situation continues to unfold, fans are watching closely. Every detail matters now. Subtle changes in language, timing, and behavior are being noticed. This heightened attention reflects the seriousness of the moment and the understanding that legal involvement raises the stakes for everyone involved. This situation also serves as a reminder that public figures are still human. They have families, businesses, and reputations that extend beyond television screens. When boundaries are crossed repeatedly, formal action becomes a way to protect what matters most. The legal notice represents more than paperwork. It represents a decision to stop allowing ongoing behavior to continue unchecked. It signals that certain lines have been crossed and that those lines will now be enforced. For viewers, this marks a turning point. The story is no longer about who said what online. It is about accountability, responsibility, and long-term consequences. The focus shifts from drama to strategy. As things stand, the future direction of this situation depends on how those involved respond. Will behavior change? Will boundaries be respected? Or will actions continue in ways that escalate the matter further? These questions remain unanswered, but one thing is clear: the dynamics have changed. Melody's move shows that sometimes the strongest response is not public confrontation, but quiet action. By stepping away from public debate and allowing legal processes to take over, she has changed the conversation entirely. This moment reminds everyone watching that real life does not follow reality television rules. Actions have consequences, and silence is a form of strength. As this situation continues to unfold, fans are watching closely. Every detail matters now. Subtle changes in language, timing, and behavior are being noticed. This heightened attention reflects the seriousness of the moment and the understanding that legal involvement raises the stakes for everyone involved. This situation also serves as a reminder that public figures are still human. They have families, businesses, and reputations that extend beyond television screens. When boundaries are crossed repeatedly, formal action becomes a way to protect what matters most. The legal notice represents more than paperwork. It represents a decision to stop allowing ongoing behavior to continue unchecked. It signals that certain lines have been crossed and that those lines will now be enforced. For viewers, this marks a turning point. The story is no longer about who said what online. It is about accountability, responsibility, and long-term consequences. The focus shifts from drama to strategy. As things stand, the future direction of this situation depends on how those involved respond. Will behavior change? Will boundaries be respected? Or will actions continue in ways that escalate the matter further? These questions remain unanswered, but one thing is clear: the dynamics have changed. Melody's move shows that sometimes the strongest response is not public confrontation, but quiet action. By stepping away from public debate and allowing legal processes to take over, she has changed the conversation entirely. This moment reminds everyone watching that real life does not follow reality television rules. Actions have consequences, and silence is a form of strength. As this situation continues to unfold, fans are watching closely. Every detail matters now. Subtle changes in language, timing, and behavior are being noticed. This heightened attention reflects the seriousness of the moment and the understanding that legal involvement raises the stakes for everyone involved. This situation also serves as a reminder that public figures are still human. They have families, businesses, and reputations that extend beyond television screens. When boundaries are crossed repeatedly, formal action becomes a way to protect what matters most. the legal notice represents more than paperwork. It represents a decision to stop allowing ongoing behavior to continue unchecked. It signals that certain lines have been crossed and that those lines will now be enforced. For viewers, this marks a turning point. The story is no longer about who said what online. It is about accountability, responsibility, and long-term consequences. The focus shifts from drama to strategy. As things stand, the future direction of the situation depends on how those involved respond. Will behavior change? Will boundaries be respected? Or will actions continue in ways that escalate the matter further? These questions remain unanswered, but one thing is clear: the dynamics have changed. Melody's move shows that sometimes the strongest response is not public confrontation, but quiet action. By stepping away from public debate and allowing legal processes to take over, she has changed the